Hey, 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 everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhammer.
And I'll just press record because I hadn't done that yet. But that's fine. It's recording live on YouTube. That's all that matters. But what we are doing again is we are out live in our post-game show on YouTube. We are also recording this for this week's podcast. But it won't just be this that's in the podcast. There'll be a couple of extra bits as well.
The AFTN Soccer Show. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve
What
Pander.
is happening?
That's Zach. Zach's mic. He didn't mute himself when he started playing the YouTube.
Oh, what a disaster. Anyway, so we're going to have a little bit of extra stuff as well in the podcast, so you don't just have to listen to this and think, well, there's nothing else to listen to. We'll delve into the podcast, into some of the other games that's taking place this weekend and look ahead to what is still to come. But we're going to be kicking things off. It is our Vancouver Whitecaps versus Sporting Kansas City end of season special. Possibly. We're not really sure what's happening yet. But it is the end of the tournament. The Whitecaps bowed out, heartbreaking fashion. It's always horrible to lose in the lottery of penalties. It means there's no Canadian teams left in Orlando. We'll delve into all the ins and outs of the game. We don't really have any set schedule for this. We'll just kind of chew the fat, take your questions in the chat, read your comments as well from the chat and on Twitter. But before we get into that, just what was your overall feeling about the match tonight? How did you feel the tactical sense of it went? Were you disappointed that we didn't maybe attack more? Or was this the best game plan that you feel with what the Whitecaps had that MDS could have gone for?
I was a little bit surprised. I was a little bit surprised again. I think I mentioned to you guys before game that that Theo was starting up top alone with basically called it 4-4-1 or whatever, with Inbaum as kind of the 10 attacking midfielder behind him. I was not shocked, but a little bit surprised by that. It also felt like due to the David Milinkovic injury that they're unable to either start him or stagger their weapons off the bench the way that they have in other games. So I think starting Dahomey was probably good for them in the end, but I would have thought they would have liked to have had like a Dahomey or Milinkovic later on in the game. So I was a little bit surprised that they didn't put Raposo in that spot and try, because like it seems like in both these games part of their plan was let's just get to the end and then it's a sprint to the finish or to the penalty spot and we'll see what we can do. Last game worked out really well. This game they were down another element of their team. And I think that really, really hurt them because Inbaum had to play very deep. And even though he had some better attacking moments than he's had all tournament, I don't think it was enough for them, obviously, going forward.
I'm more to the point that I think this is the only option they really had. That, you know, sure, Inbaum playing up top might have been not the best thing. Maybe a Tybert who could have put a little bit more pressure on the Kansas City backline, but I didn't see them even having that as an option of applying pressure because the fact that I think the whole game they only used one sub. And I did anybody ask about man management to MDS in the post game or not?
No, it was a strange post game
because there was no options.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing that he could have done is bring Raposo on. I would have done that because Theo Bair looked pretty dead on his feet in the closing 5-10 minutes. And I maybe just brought Ryan on just to try and give him the ball, run at that defense and see what happened. But we'll come to all of that. I think it's fair to say Kansas City deserved to win. They deserved to go through. They were the better team. And for all we can talk about a battling performance and a gritty performance, if KC had taken the numerous amount of chances that they had, and like Johnny Russell squandered loads, I owe him a few packets of chocolate digestives and some jam for that. But I mean, they could have been out of sight if they'd taken those chances. Some good saves from Thomas Hasal. some good defending from the guys as well. But I don't think anyone could have come away from that match feeling that the Whitecaps really deserved to win it.
Yeah, they didn't have very many good chances. I think I remember the Ali Adnan, obviously the late free kick that really ruffled Tamilia a little bit. There was a chance Theo Bair had. I can't remember in the 40th or 50th minute mark where he looked like he was in a good position and couldn't get a really shot. And actually, I scared my wife because I was watching the game on the thing, and she was watching Sherlock on the TV, and I yelled. It was a tense situation in Sherlock, and I yelled for the bear thing, and it scared her. So she turned off the game and left at that point because she was too freaked out. But overall, I thought it was exactly what they needed to do, and you wish they could have gone a little bit more chances here and there, but really nothing available. Kansas City played a perfect game, even though you wanted them to finish chances for them, but overall they controlled the game. There's no really channels for Vancouver to get into.
Yeah, there were a couple of promising attacking moments, and including the one you're talking about where Theo Bair did well to create space for a shot, but then the shot itself was a little bit weak. There was a free kick you mentioned, I agree with. There's one or two other moments where the buildup was good, but the shooting opportunity wasn't there. The other one that, again, going back to Imbaum and him having some flashes of positive offensive contribution, he had the one shot with his left foot from outside the box that I mean, Melia had to make the save. I think it would have at least hit the crossbar. It was one of the brighter moments in the game. But when you're talking about the Whitecaps in this game, and maybe the tournament as a whole, there should be a lot of questions or concerns just about their movement on the field and how they play. They're like the beginning of the game today, the offensive players, and I don't think it was just because of how they were playing defensive and their inability to transition into the offense, but the spacing between the players was just seemed out of whack.
Yeah, inconsistent. A lot of inconsistency in the space.
It wasn't even inconsistent. It was just that it was poor. Like, it were such big gaps between players that players had very little option, and so they either tried to force something or they just got closed down. The other thing about that goes along with that I think later in the game, it's tired legs, I know, and all that kind of stuff, but their movement away from the ball is something that really, really needs to be worked on, because there's so many times in that game where one or two players are working really hard in the offensive half, let's say, are working really hard to make something happen, and no one is moving. And I know we talked in the past before. Some have said maybe this was last year and whatever, or a different time, or earlier in the year before other things have been done. But there has been talk that MDS, and I know other coaches have done this as well, but MDS talks about wanting to let the players play more freely in the final third, to be creative, to have the ability just to attack in the moment and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's valid in one respect for professional footballers. But when you look at how they've been doing that, even in this tournament and all the circumstances that come with it, I think you can't help but look at it and say there's a lot that needs to be worked on there, and there should be less openness to just the fluidity of what people want to do or where they're at in the moment. And there should be definitely some work being done more on what the runs they want to have and the movement that they want to have, because I think that could have helped them even continue to overachieve in this tournament today had they been a little bit more on in that sense.
And I think there was a couple of times too. There was one particular moment when I remember, not even in the final third, like in the buildup, they were controlling a lot of play on the left-hand side, and then they were switching the ball to the right where they got it to Jake, and then the thing is they moved the ball over, but the players didn't move over with the ball, and then Jake got the ball and he had nowhere to get it to, so he basically tried to split the two attacking players and lost the ball, and it was just a giveaway at that point. And the prior buildup or the movement of the ball was really good, but it was just that once they got to the other side, he had no outlet to get it to. So you're right, not only in the final third, but other parts of the pitch too, that they got to move with the ball and create options.
Hydration break, Michael.
Oh yeah, there was two in the space of a few minutes in that second half. I mean, if we look at the stats, I mean, it kind of shows KC's dominance. Possession-wise, KC had 62.5% of the possession. They had 36 shots, but only 8 of them were on target. Of course, none of them went in the back of the net. So there you go. And 22 off target with 6 blocked. The Whitecaps, by comparison, had 8 shots and only 5 of those on target. No off target, but 3 were blocked. But I mean, to give up that amount of shots is risky in any game. In a knockout game in particular, I think it is. But the defense on the whole looked pretty good. MDS touched on it after the match. That's 180 plus minutes now that the Whitecaps have not given a goal up. So it's after the third goal went in against Seattle. From that moment on, they've not given a goal up in this tournament. So, I mean, that is a positive to take from it. And we saw it in Robbo's years. If you get the defense right, it gives you something to build on. It gives you a base to build on. And then you just need the attacking pieces there. It has felt, though, apart from some small bursts, like the small burst in that Chicago game, the last few minutes tonight, I thought that the Whitecaps did pretty well, but we just don't seem to have that burst. And I know we're missing the likes of Cavallini, Ricketts, guys that would maybe have done that. Do you think it was the right decision to keep Reyna on the bench, first of all, to start with? And then did he come on early enough? Or do you think the way that Mark had wanted to play it out, that was like perfect?
I think he should have came on earlier, and I think the player he should have came on earlier for was Theo Bair. I do like the way Theo Bair played, especially holding up play. I think that helped him a lot in the buildup of when they wanted to do it. He had a couple of really good times when he got the ball, stopped it, let everybody come up and get into position. But overall, I thought he would. I think the problem is the reason why they didn't bring him on so early was because they didn't want to take Theo Bair off, and they didn't want to put both of those players, like Reyna with Mbom, and then in that position. So I think that's the reason why he didn't come on earlier. But I would have liked to see him come on at the 60th minute, even the 55th minute. But I guess maybe because they didn't know about injuries too, they didn't know who they were going to take off because they didn't have very many options. So they had to keep their options open at that point too.
To be honest, Steve, I was feeling that actually in the game. I was like, man, they really got to bring Jordy on. They really got to bring Jordy on.
Yeah.
But in the end, I didn't really mind how they did it. It didn't work out for them, obviously, but I didn't mind how they did it because I really think Jordy and Christian kind of had, or Dahome had some good passes with each other and stuff, and they missed each other a couple of times, but they couldn't pull anything off. But I thought that giving him like whatever those 18 plus 6 minutes, I thought was kind of sufficient enough. I was a little bit worried when I think TSN announced that he was coming on for Bair, and I thought I didn't like that. I think you needed some kind of presence up front. But even though I didn't want Bair to come off, I messaged you guys this or whatever, but I really thought as soon as they brought him on and they left Bair on, it felt like Dahome was tired and Adnan was a little bit tired, and it felt like they were really going to get caught out in the middle, because when you took out Mbom, who was playing as like a 10 attacking midfielder, but really he was doing a lot of help in the midfield, doing a lot of work.
Advanced eight.
Yeah, it really felt like Kansas City was going to be able just to play through the middle really easy, just some give and go, and they did it a few times. Like you saw them attack the middle a little bit with just some give and goes, and a couple guys just said, "I'm just going to play the ball past these tired midfielders and run." Again, it didn't work out for Kansas City, during the 90 minutes. But if I was Peter Vermees, I would have been so happy to see that sub, and how Vancouver sort of aligned after that. I think they won't care because it went through, but I think Peter Vermees will be like, we should have taken more advantage of the space and the numbers that we had in central midfield when Mbom.
I think if the Caps had gone through, Peter Vermees' post-game press conference would have been very interesting. I would love to have known what he said in that. It was interesting. And I kind of touched about this in the extra podcast. This was something that was asked to Peter Vermees in his pre-game press conference, which was, there's no points on the line. Do you guys, I think the exact wording was, I know you're not going to go out and tank a game, but do you guys not just want to maybe get home now? And when I watched TFC earlier, that was kind of the feeling I had from TFC. It was like they had kind of checked out and they just wanted to get home. But the Whitecaps, they wanted to be there. They still wanted to be there. And there was an interesting... I only went into Mark DeSantis's post-game press conference. Thomas Hasal and Russell Tybert were next up, but I wanted to get this started, so I didn't stay for that. But someone's just sent me Alex from Between the Sticks. I had tweeted out, Tybert said, I don't like the phrase depleted squad. We didn't play like it here. Our team showed heart. But saying it's a depleted squad's got nothing to do with showing heart.
Yeah, no,
depleted squad just means the numbers aren't there.
Yeah, I think Tybert's got the definitions mixed up there. So I that's fine. He obviously got it mixed up with what the person was trying to ask and what the answer he was giving. The one thing that I will say about, I do agree with you there, that the one thing you can't dismiss them on is that they didn't play, with heart, or whatever you want to say, play all out. They were not giving it in like TFC did, it seemed like. I think Anna retweeted somebody earlier on Twitter and said that it was a reminder to Whitecaps fans that unless you win this thing, there's no point of this tournament. This tournament is pointless, especially the knockout stages. I don't even know. Is there any advantage? You said there's a CONCACAF berth with this.
Whoever wins the overall tournament gets in the CONCACAF Champions League, and then there's $1 million in prize money.
So other than that, there's nothing.
No, I mean, the group games that counts towards the regular season, so that's worthwhile. But from this point onwards, like if you're a team in this competition, like let's see FC Cincinnati, the chances of you winning this is pretty slim. So why hang about any longer than you need to hang about?
Have they picked up a trophy at all, or are they going to wait till like the last weekend to pick up a trophy for whoever wins this thing?
I have to see what shops are open, and I don't know what malls are open with the engraving, but they'll work something out, sure.
Maybe they'll pick up something on the side of the road or something like that.
Yeah, see if Chris Jericho's left anything lying around.
Yeah. No, but here's the thing though, right? I think you're a professional footballer, so you don't.
I am.
No, I mean these players in this tournament, you want to win, right? I'm sure the whole where they are and what's going on in the world plays a role mentally, for sure, no doubt. But you still want to win, right? Like I enjoyed last episode. I enjoyed the clip you shared with Brian Schmetzer, a person who I have a lot of respect for, even though I really don't like his club. I think he has a good understanding of what a football club is and what his role is. And he was questioned about whether or not his team really wanted to be there in those first couple games.
It's the most stupid question.
Yeah, and he said we every football game we play, we want to win, and I think it's the same for all professional footballers. And my limited experience with them, especially close up in and around games, has shown me that over the years, that they do not like to lose, they do not like to draw, they do not like to be eliminated from things. And so that's one element. The CONCACAF Champions League thing, I think, is also may not be hugely significant, especially in the round of 16. Might not be hugely on their hearts or their minds, but I think it is significant. And then think about however this money gets broken up, I think is significant. Just think of, especially for this Whitecaps team, and maybe in some ways it's more significant because you don't have as many starters here playing.
Yeah, they're going to get a bigger share.
Yeah, so whatever the bonus would be might be almost, barely significant in comparison to their annual salary. And so I think that for anyone at their job, when there's a bonus on the line, I think you want to play for it. So I don't have any questions about Vancouver's effort at all, especially in these last two games. I think the effort was really apparent to anyone who watched the full games. But I mean, the depleted thing. I mean, they're depleted, and that's not a knock against their effort, and that's not a knock against anyone individually or anything like that. And so, I think that's unfortunate that Rusty answered that question that way.
We won't go through much of the game because there really isn't too much to talk about. There's a couple of incidents I want to highlight just to finish off this part. First of all, I would argue Kinda could have got a second yellow and been sent off for KC, but I weigh that up by saying Gutierrez was also a lucky lad and could have got a second yellow and got sent off to the Whitecaps. So balanced itself out. But do you think either did deserve a second yellow?
I like I told you guys as we were, messaging during the game,
Yeah.
I think Gutierrez is far more lucky to have stayed on the pitch than Kinda. I see the case for Kinda. I think he was okay to be let off the way he was. But that second tackle the first tackle by Gutierrez in MLS, I could have seen him sent off for that, even though I think
Yeah.
the card was
It
playing.
didn't look bad at first, I thought. And then when you see the other angle and it's right on his ankle, you're like, eee.
When you see
Yeah,
the
but
other angle,
the guy did stop in front of him. So when you stop in front of
Mm.
somebody, it's hard to control yourself. But also the second Gutierrez one, there was an arm on him, like basically grabbing him as well, pulling him down. Like if you see it from the other angle, and I totally understand that you're saying the two legs kind of did constitute, but you could see a pull there. I think because he gave Kinda the second chance, even though that might have been a off yellow, maybe a yellow, maybe not a yellow, because he gave him off. That's why he gave Gutierrez off, possibly.
yeah, but they're not equal things, man. When you clamp like that, Steve, with those two, when you go in 2-footed like that, and you scissor or clamp or whatever, like that's like always a yellow card when you play the player that way. Like he was extremely fortunate in my opinion.
Mm. The only real things I know from the Whitecaps' point of view during the normal game, there was a couple of shots. There was that spell where they forced 3-4 corners, I think it was, and you had the Wong effort that was tipped over, and then there was Dahome's effort had been tipped over before that. That was a good little spell, and it was a bit like the Chicago game where they just caught that lightning in a bottle for those few minutes, whereas in Chicago it went in the back of the net. They're coming up against a much better keeper, obviously in Tim Melia. But that and the Ali Adnan kind of free kick, I mean, that was pretty good as well. But obviously, we're going to talk about Thomas Asao as well. Over the course of 90 minutes, he's certainly saved the Whitecaps, had a couple of good saves. What was going through your mind when he took that head knock? Because I thought, this is just made for the story of how the Whitecaps are going to go out. Or it's going to be Ali Adnan, a cult hero, as he fends off all the saves and then saves 5 in the penalty shootout.
It was funny that earlier today I was on YouTube and I was just checking out random videos, the recommendations that pop up. And one of the recommendations was outfield players taking over for goalkeepers, compilation. And it just happened to pop up today. And it was a couple. There was one Aston Villa one. I can't remember any of the names now. There's one that John Terry took over in Chelsea for one too. But that's the first thing that came to my mind, because you could see right away. I guess they knew. The camera people knew, because the camera went right to Ali Adnan to show him when he went down. But when you look at the replay, you could see that he was in pain, but you could see there was no knockout thing. Like he didn't look like he was knocked out at any point. So that's why. And wasn't there a player earlier, Dahomey? I think Dahomey was checked for concussion.
Oh,
too,
yeah,
at one point.
yeah.
So there was
a
couple
bit of a concern.
Yeah, there were a couple of knocks there that would have been really bad for them. But it looked like he was fine. The guy was ultimately amazing today. Like I thought he made some really good saves. His movement from back to side to side was really good. The Kinda save early on was really good. I know he only saved 1 out of 4 or whatever, which is pretty good average actually for a goalkeeper. But the fact, the way he stands on the line and the way he gives that little smirk, or like it looks like he's like, I want to nickname him the Joker or something like that, because he has that little smirk as people are coming up. So there was no tenseness in him when going into the penalty shootout, where people might say that Melia was nervous, but maybe Melia is more intense. I don't think he was nervous, Melia, but he was more intense, where Hassal was completely relaxed in that. In that play.
They said it on the broadcast, right? Like I mean,
intensity had more to lose.
Oh yeah, if you're Thomas, you got nothing to lose. If you're Melia, you got everything to lose. His whole clapping of hands and banging the bar, again, like his attempted diving header outside the box the other day, reminded me a little bit of Manuel Neuer, because I've seen him do that before. Maybe he's not his goalkeeping hero, but maybe that is someone that has influenced him. But
I did ask him who his hero was when we interviewed him back in February. I can't remember who he said. I'll try and check that out. Well, I mean, that it was 0-0 at the end of the 90 minutes. It kind of looked like that was how it was going. I was going to tweet that out, but I thought, no, folk here are very big in their jinxes and stuff. So I didn't want to be held responsible for that. But it did make me wear my T-shirt for tonight. Goals are overrated. The beauty is in the struggle, which was a T-shirt I offered to buy for Carl Robinson for him to wear when he was giving a team talk. And he said, "Huh, can you imagine if I walked into the locker room wearing that?" This was when they were going through their spell of not scoring. I really should have got him it. It would have been hilarious. But penalties it was. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, we'll be back talking about that after this. And if you're watching this, we're going to talk about it now. So, the penalty shootout. When it went to penalties, I already had my headline. I tweeted it out, got in early. The Whitecaps, the way they played, it was kind of ugly. So it'd be like the ugly sisters would become Cinderella, the Cinderella story of the MLS thing. It'd be a Disney fairy tale. Yeah, it didn't work out that way. Instead, we got some ugly penalties. They were not good penalties. Now, Dahomey, I don't think that was a bad penalty. He tried to place it. The goals are a little bit wider in Colombia. So, I mean, that was
hit the inside of the post and still bounced out. Usually when it hits the inside of the post, it'll go in, but it actually bounced out. So that was I thought, who was the second one? Owosu. Yeah, that was not a good one.
No, that was lucky that he got it in, but it was a lucky little flighted ball. Derek's was not good.
Dahomey was the only one who took whose take was somewhat quality. I agree with you. The other three were really, really poor.
Yeah, Reyna as well.
Actually, Reyna's I think Reyna's was the worst one out of all three. At least Cornelius nailed it with some power or something like that. Hopefully, maybe it gets through him. But Reyna's, I don't know.
But see, penalties are even more so nowadays. I think an art form. Keepers more study players. They study, statistics and then probabilities of, how bodies are shaped and where you're standing and all that kind of stuff. And I know, Michael, we were talking about this. You say the Whitecaps, they do some penalties at the end of every practice, but they did not look like a team. I mean, not that Kansas City was great, but the Whitecaps did not look like a team that had been spending the last couple of days preparing for a match that could have ended in penalties.
Where was Ali Adnan taking a penalty? Was he the fifth guy?
I think he would have been the fifth. Yeah, I think he would have been the fifth.
Usually when you don't normally keep your, I'm assuming he's the best penalty killer, but penalty taker. But why would you save your best penalty taker for the last one? You want that quick start and get less confidence for the keeper that you're posing.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I've seen different coaches do different things over the years. A lot of them do put their best guy up. I was happy that we were taken first. I thought, great. I wanted us to get first, put the pressure on. But then as soon as Dahomey missed, I was like, nah, that's going to be it. Now, fair play to Thomas. He saved one. He got his hand on one as well. And
two of them. Oh yeah. One of the Bucios was was just off past his fingertips. Yeah. So he guessed right on that one too. There was only one he didn't guess right at all.
But we did get a message in the YouTube chat. Get some more messages in if you're watching this stream from Prog Tim, who said he's very proud of the boys, but what's the point of having rules about keepers leaving the line early when Melia left early on two of the ones he stopped? Now, I've got to say, I didn't notice that. I'll have to watch that back. But yeah, interesting if that is the case. Did you guys notice that?
No, I didn't notice that. The only one I noticed was the first one for that Hasal, because it was that triple kick that everybody's taking now, the hop, skip, and a kick. That people do.
I don't like that.
And that was the one illegal. Where I think it should be, because if you're gonna have to, if you want keepers to stay on the line, then you shouldn't be doing this it should be a straightforward kick, not like a delayed motion or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you do. If you do that delayed motion, if you do that delayed motion, the goalkeeper shouldn't be penalized for coming off the line then at that point.
Run up, hop, step, speak. I agree. I don't like those penalties at all, even though one of my favorite penalty takers, Robert Lewandowski, is, that's one of his main forms of taking a penalty. But that's what I'm talking about in terms of it being an art form now. Like, I personally think the rules should probably hinder anything like that. I like when they stopped, you couldn't do that whole stutter or whatever. You know, you have to have the forward motion going or whatever, which is now players have found ways to kind of to keep their forward motion while psyching out the keeper or whatever, like Alan Polito did on his. But that when I say penalties are an art form, that you have to work at that. They cannot be an add-on. That especially when you're going to a match where a whole bunch of players are going to be taking them. You need to have players who are working at them, and not just going up there and being like, you know, as I'm walking up, I think I'm going to put it over here. No, they need to know going in. I used to tell my players when I would coach youth players, like, look, if you miss, you get stopped, I'm okay. I'm going to ask you when you go back if you put the ball where you wanted it to go. I just want you to make a decision before you get there and to put it there, and that's it. And you know, if you get stopped, fair enough. If you mishit it, fair enough. If it goes over, fair enough. But I want, like, you need to go with a determination and a plan. And yeah, I think professional players should, like, they didn't. The penalties, again, even a couple of the KC ones did not look like they weren't quality. Like the one Thomas saved, it was a good save, don't get me wrong, but the placement and the pace of it was not good.
But I think that was one where Hasal deked out the penalty taker, because he went one way and then went back the other way, making the taker think he was going to go that way.
The advice I always gave when I was coaching the kids was you hit it as hard as you can, straight down the middle, aim for the keeper's nuts. If it goes in because he's dived, great. If it doesn't and it hits him square in the nuts, he's ruled out for the next couple of kicks, so you've got more of a chance.
Sage advice.
Yeah, not coaching youth anymore. I don't know if but it works.
Russell's nuts got hit a little bit there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Was he just pretending that, or because that hit his hand?
You don't know.
His hand hit himself, or
no?
It's a Scottish thing. Your hand's always down there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say that too.
Michael.
It's like when we were watching the game earlier, and when Gary Mackay-Stephen came on for New York City FC, my new Scottish bud in MLS. I said to Caitlin, "Oh, here he is. He's Scottish." And she looked up at the screen and she's like, "He looks ill." I'm like, "No, that's just how Scottish people look. We're really, really pale."
You got to understand that guys and have that part of the region and their hands have a special relationship. So when their hands get hit, it's a very simpatico relationship where they feel it everywhere.
We've got a special visitor.
No.
Talking of hands and things. He's going to join us later when we're talking about the future of MLS. So stay tuned for that. Just go back down to what you were doing, Dion. Anyway, so we're finished now. The Whitecaps are out. They're going home. If you listen to this on the podcast, we'll play a little bit of audio now from both head coaches. So we'll have SKC's Peter Vermees up first, then a little bit from the gaffer, MDS. But obviously, those of you watching the stream, you can pause it, go watch the press conference on Twitter, but I'll go over a few things that he said. So a few things, I've written them down that MDS kind of said in the press conference there. He basically feels that what we saw from the team in this tournament is the foundation of what we as the team can be about. And he thinks that the foundations that are laid are great for the future. He talked about his game plan was to try and just keep it scoreless and then to go for it in the second half. I would argue, though, that they didn't really go for it in the second half. That's the only thing. They had a few forays forward, but it didn't look like they were going out all guns blazing to try and get the goal.
I think the big difference there is that the Sporting Kansas City's backline midfield was much more organized than what Chicago's was, and they didn't open up as much. And I think that's the big difference there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Steve. You're not playing when you're playing Kansas City. You're playing a team that is well organized. You're playing a team that has a very defined way of playing, and they've been playing it for years. Whereas, yeah, you're playing Chicago. You have a new coach. You have a number of new players. It's a whole different kettle of fish. I think they tried to go for it. They just didn't have as many subs to create to make a difference. I thought we talked about this earlier, but the one person maybe they could have brought on and didn't was Raposo, right? I thought maybe he could have been a bit of a especially with what I think he felt with MDS would feel as such limited options. I thought Raposo could have been brought on to help things out a bit.
The only thing I thought about that was because he's young and he's just in the pro ranks from college, did he maybe feel that keeping Theo on because he knows the system and he would maybe put in a better defensive shift than what Ryan would do, and he just didn't want to take that risk at that point? It's like, if it's going to be 0-0, you may as well just go for penalties at that point.
Yeah.
Michael, can I bring up a question from the chat here?
Mm-hmm.
Good thing, I think, here. What did you guys think? This is from Darnell Smith. So thanks for the question, Darnell. What did you guys think of Adnan in front of Gutierrez? I thought we had far better pressure on the ball out wide.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it against Chicago. We talked about that's what we'd like to see. I didn't think it was as effective tonight as that electric time against Chicago, but I like it. Ali, I spoke to him in the pre-game press conference, and one of the questions, I can't remember if it was me that asked him or someone else that asked him now, was about him playing that position. And he said, it was me that asked him that, actually. He said he prefers to play left back, but he does like 5 at the back. And I think that is because it allows him, to get forward. He's still got the cover back there if need be.
Right.
Tonight, it was good, but it wasn't as good as it could be. But I think that is something to definitely work on. I like Gutierrez. What we've seen of him so far, I think is very good.
The thing is with them playing 5 at the back, if either Rancor or Godoy is that the middle of the 3, I think they're not going to lose anything in possession, because those guys can handle the ball, and I think that would work really well for them. So I think that without going forward, that might work. But I didn't see any. I know Gutierrez could have got sent off, obviously with a second yellow card, but overall defensively, I didn't see any difference, or I thought it was actually might have been even an improvement over what Adnan offers back there. So I thought it was pretty good. And I thought they really, the left side, we talked about before, they had a good few spells of interblocking play, those two. So I thought it really worked well.
Yeah, I think it gives them something to think about for whenever it is they get to play games next, because I think it is a potential really good option for them, whether it's an every match thing or a situational thing, or as they're facing certain kinds of opponents. I think it definitely adds something. And it also does allow Gutierrez to tuck in and Ali to drop deep in, when you're in a pressure situation, in terms of maybe trying to hold on to a lead or to see a game, to see out a point on the road or whatever.
Let's get to some of the chats here. So Darnell Smith again says, how great was it to see MDS tactically be competitive despite all his injuries and short recovery? And it was good. He did talk about, in the build-up to the Chicago game, he wants the fans to see what he is as a coach, that he is a leader, and that he can get the best out of his team. And you might say, well, it wasn't too exciting attacking performances, but I think it was what we needed to do. And I think he showed some good tactical awareness there. And if you look at his teams in the past, the Deltas, when he was with Swope Park and at Ottawa, it was always built out of a solid defense first and foremost. And I think that's really what he has to kind of work on now, because the attacking pieces are there, but we are still badly needing a decent midfield as well.
Yeah, I think the midfield is probably the number one thing, but that back line has shown, especially, and I think when Eric Godoy gets back and they pick up a few more pieces, especially if they can get that midfield going a little bit in order to protect them, especially in the wide areas. I think that this back line is going to be pretty solid with Renko and Godoy leading the way. And they had. I know. You know, some of the players are still there, but they basically done a total rebuild on that back line ever since Kendall Waston left. Even I think Kendall Waston's last year, it was that back line wasn't that great. More like when Tim Parker, yeah. When Tim Parker left, that was when they had that big drop off. So I think bringing Branko, Godoy, I thought they bought Branko, but I guess they didn't. They have him on loan for option to purchase. Sorry.
Yes, it's a 1-year loan, because when I spoke to him, I asked him about that.
Yeah.
Whether he's just using this as a shop window to go back to. He said, no, I'd like to, my aim is to get signed permanent to stay here.
Yeah,
I liked him. For me,
he's been one of their top 3 players in this tournament for sure.
Yeah. Because Hassal's probably the big takeaway from this, but after that, for me, it's Ranko. I just thought he's been excellent.
Yeah.
A couple of other questions here. Sorry, what are you going to say, Zach?
I was just going to say, tactically, I think the last 2 games, I think it's fair to give MDS a lot of credit. I think tactically, they were lacking in the Seattle game. And obviously that's muddied by the fact that the team they're playing is so superior for them, even with all their players. But I also felt like, from a tactical perspective, they needed to get something from that San Jose game. They needed to see out that lead, whether it was even, I mean, it wouldn't have been great if it was a draw, but even if it was a draw, more could, and I know there's all these circumstances around everything, but if you just feel like tactically more could have been done in that game to see them get something from it. But I have a lot of respect for MDS, and the way he approaches the game and how hard he works and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm not saying he, is super deficient or anything, but I think he would like to have both those games back, in terms of how both he drew things up, and more so the San Jose game, how they adapted within the game itself.
Not saying I don't think he was in danger of getting fired or anything like that, but this kind of has these last 2 games, you guys think have solidified his position as the coach a little bit better? There's less questions about it.
I don't know that there is. I mean, there is still some people, but we'll come to that in the next part. Actually.
I'm not talking about supporters. Supporters, you're never going to satisfy people all the time. Like you're just not going to satisfy that. I'm talking about like the people that are making the decisions. Like I know they probably weren't going to fire him.
There was ever any...
but this is kind of made him a little bit better, in a better standing than what he was before going into this tournament.
I don't think there was really any questions about him from the ownership or anything, no.
Well, no, I'm just saying that he looks better overall. Like he's kind of proven where they might have had some, doubts. The doubts have been kind of taken away. I'm not saying that they had doubts. I'm saying if they had doubts, these 2 games have taken those doubts away.
I mean, I think in one sense, I want to answer this like Brian Spencer did some of his questions the other day, where it's like, I think that those are really unfair questions that are more in the fan supporter sphere of things, which is fair for them to I think discuss those or share their thoughts and perspectives on them. This ownership group and the executives running the team, I think we've seen this year that they make decisions that are not, that are hard for everyone else to comprehend at times. So you never know with them. But I think that the one thing that they will appreciate about MDS in this tournament is I think he overachieved. I think the team overachieved just to get out of the group with all the circumstances surrounding the squad. And so I think, this, in one sense, Steve, to answer your question plainly, I think, yes, this is a positive thing for MDS.
So just a couple of quick final things from the chat here, then we'll take another little break. Team Batesy says he thought things were better offensively wise, but than before the break against Chicago, but it was slanted. Naveed Masinchi says better team went through, but the guys really put in a shift. That's all you can ask for from this group. Prog Tim says the mood would be a lot different, he thinks, if Hassal didn't play out of his mind and we'd lost 2 or 3-0. Possibly. I mean, if this had been a hammering tonight, which it could easily have been, I do think the mood of the supporters coming out of it is going to be very different. But you could say that really about a lot of games.
No, so
Naveen-
true.
yeah.
It depends. It depends on the result all the time. Like, but but if you were going to say that after the result against Chicago, you think there were a lot more people that were happy about the game instead of criticizing the game.
Well, yeah. I mean, we talked about that last show. If you couldn't be happy after that and going through, I don't know what you're looking for from a Whitecaps perspective, but yeah.
Michael, you should read Naveed's next comment. He says, "Is it 10
Yeah.
wins in 40 games though for MDS? We need to look into that."
He hasn't won a lot, yes. I mean, it's certainly that, but that's 25%.
Oh, Michael, the next comment is, or the last comment is even better. Tillman D says, "I bought some chocolate digestives after listening to the last episode. Do you get a commission for that?"
Oh, I should get in touch with McVitie's. So it's only if you bought the McVitie's ones. If you bought some of the store-bought ones or the Dare ones that they have over here, then no. So let us know what brand. Hopefully it is McVitie's, because that is the only one. We are looking at possibly doing some chocolate digestive T-shirts. So there we go. That's a good way to end this part. So if you listen to it on the podcast, we'll be back with more Whitecaps chat after the break. And if you're watching this, we'll just continue as if nothing's happened. Anyway, got two more things we're going to talk about here on the live stream. So we're going to round up a little bit of talk about the Whitecaps. Then we're going to kind of look at what the future might look like for MLS, which in the podcast is going to go out in part 5. So a little bit more of what MDS said after the game. He praised his team for the professionalism, the effort, and he feels that they did everything that they could. They're coming out of the tournament stronger and better than they went into it, and that it's going in the right direction as a club, and that we will be a strong club. Now, I mentioned his comments about the foundations of what this club could be earlier on. Do you feel, considering who wasn't here, and looking at what the other teams are in this tournament, that we do have a strong foundation? Or are we still desperately needing some pieces to really be able to compete in MLS? We know we need a 10. But if you add that 10 and you've got all the players that weren't down there fit and ready to go, obviously we've lost Max Kripol. Whether we have Thomas Hasal or Brian Meredith going forward for the next little spell will be interesting to see. But do you think we have what it takes to compete, or are we still way off the pace?
For me, I'm going to sound like a broken record again, but for me, it's the midfield. The midfield is sorely lacking still. If Bikel comes in there and he's your fourth guy or a starter, and you knock somebody else to the bench, that might do better. But you're 100% right about the number 10. The number 10 is needed, and that number 10 needs to be either their best player or their second best player on their roster. Doesn't have to be the salary wise, doesn't have to be the top or second best, but talent wise and everything like that has to be their best or second best player on their roster. And if they do that, then they have a chance to compete, because there are other pieces around. We've seen the homie. I've been very impressed with him from what, considering the circumstances. I've been with it, what he's done in flashes. I didn't expect very much from Milinkovic, and he only showed stuff in flashes, so that's fine. And other players have shown flashes, but if that number 10 comes in there, and I think that they're off and running, and they're in a much better chance to compete with other teams.
It's a really good question, Michael. You have to think that they would be, encouraged by what happened in this tournament. And I think it's really helpful for a team and for a squad when you get to have more people involved in something positive. And so I think they're going to view this as a positive. And so those players who maybe aren't going to be, starters with whatever happens for the rest of the season, that might, spur them on and help them to play at their top level, or maybe even above themselves when they do get to be in the squad or make appearances or come off the bench or whatever. I do think they are lacking, and I won't go into the details of the DP conversation again, but I agree with you both that they need a creative central attacking midfield player. I mean, I would settle for a Johnny Russell, who's a wide attacking creative kind of midfield player, but
So would I.
yeah, but I think I really think they need to have that, and we talk about this all the time. Pedro Morales is the best example of what they've had in the MLS. Wasn't perfect, but by far the best example. My heart wants to say you have to also consider Davide Cumento at the beginning of MLS as well. Although he was very rarely played centrally, he was often shifted wide for other reasons. But
another guy that's underrated for a guy, he wasn't a midfielder, but he was really good at creating and driving the play, was Kenny Miller. Kenny Miller was, he was a striker, but he usually played behind Camilo a little, and I thought he was really good at connecting play a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's the experience factor though as well.
Yeah.
To take that tangent even further, it wasn't even. Kenny Miller was his experience and all that, and his abilities were a huge part of that. But it was also the triumphant of him playing with. He had that run where him, Camilo, and Russell Tybert were quite the threesome.
Yeah.
They were quite a creative mix and a goal scoring mix. And I don't know if that's the kind of lightning they're going to catch in the bottle really easy in Vancouver now, but they need someone who can help create. They're in desperate need for that. I know earlier I picked on the movement and stuff, and again, part of the counter to that is that this is not all their natural offensive pieces and all that kind of stuff, but they are still missing some creative offensive pieces that can really. The language you've used in the past is be a game changer, or make a difference in the game. And
but I mean, you look around the league, and you're seeing all these teams that find these pieces, and not all of them are like from spending money.
No,
some of them obviously are. I mean, Diego Valeri didn't cost Portland a lot of money. Look what he's done for them. He's the kind of guy that every club dreams of having somebody like him. But there's some other good number 10s in the league that they've been found, and you have to maybe wonder, why aren't they coming here? Is it the fact that we're a Canadian club? Because a lot of these we could afford. Is it our scouting systems let us down over the years? Is it we relied too much on getting players from certain agencies and stuff in previous years and maybe didn't have those talents available?
Or are they trying to get players that are maybe not experienced, like you said, but have up value that they can try to sell off or later on, but they don't actually translate.
Yeah.
And so
I think we're doing that too much. It's like, how many seasons now have we had a coach, whether it's Robbo or MDS or the player themselves, talking about, I'm here to put myself in the shop window and get a better move, and then they don't perform. Or the coach saying, there's a lot of upside to him, or we've seen what he can do, but he was struggling at his current club, so we want to try and reignite him and bring him back to what he could be. You can only have a certain amount of that in a team. Last season, we had way too many of them. We had like 5 or 6 projects, and none of them really came together.
Private detective friend.
Yes. Whatever happened to him? We need a finished article. And it's all very well going and spending like $6 million on Cava. Great. Not going to knock that. He's a great guy. I'm sure he'll get the goals for us once we get back to playing, whenever that's going to be, if he does indeed play. But it's no point having a top striker if you're not getting any creativity to give him the ball, especially someone like Cava that's maybe not a guy that goes out and makes his own opportunities.
No, I can't agree with you more, Michael. That's something that, even though they might not say it publicly, that you got to think people like MDS and Axel Schuster are, dying to bring in someone, as you described, of that quality and who will be able to contribute in those ways. So that's a lot about the offense. You talk a little bit about the defense earlier, sort of, Michael, but like, do you think that everything's fine at the back?
I think they're
No.
better off.
Yeah.
I think they're getting to the point. I think they have the pieces. It's a matter of putting those pieces together. The only, and I don't want to knock them, but the only position that I see a weakness on right now is that right side. Not only because it's Jake, but Jake really has no cover, because I'd rather see Bikel in the midfield at this point. So
Well,
about
right,
good
let me put this to you then. Let's assume everyone is fit and healthy, and it's the squad that we have, because Schuster's basically talked about they're not looking to bring anyone else in. He said that several times now in Zoom chats over the last couple of weeks. So ignore the goalkeeper, because I think Thomas Hasal will get a run now, but not guaranteed. First of all, what formation do you think we should be playing with who we've got? And then we'll kind of go through who would be the defense and stuff. The formation for me is the tough one, because you look at some of the players we've got and you're like overloaded and potentially talented wingers. You're overloaded with maybe defensive central midfielders, but you've still got this big missing piece that's going to link everything together. An interesting thing, I'll be playing this in the next part. Jim Curtin, the Philly head coach, after his game on Saturday night, he just said an interesting thing during the game, so I asked him about it afterwards, where he said at one point he felt he had 5 at the back, 5 up front, and there was absolutely nothing in the middle. And that's how it's felt a little bit for the Whitecaps. Even when we've actually had bodies there, it's felt like we don't.
Well, for Whitecaps, usually it's 5 at the back, 5 in the middle, and nobody up front. That's usually what their problem is. You're saying everybody's healthy, right? You're saying
you've got a full squad to pick from.
I think that it's easy for me. Then it's whether you want to call it a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. That's the ideal thing, because I really like I like those 3 defenders in the back, and allowing Ali Adnan and whoever plays on the right side to move up the pitch and attack from the wide areas. I think that gives them more width and everything like that.
So, Steve, formation, fill it out for us. Who's playing in those?
For me right now at this point, I got Godoy and Renko and either Cornelius and Kamiri in that in that third spot. I got on the right side, you can put Jake or Bikel in there, and left side you put Gutierrez. Oh, sorry, Adnan. Sorry, and then up. Who else? Who's left? 5-3-2. Okay, so I'm good in position. There's the 3 up, 3 in the middle. I would probably stick in with Owosu and Inbom for sure, and either put Tybert or Bikel, depending on who you put on the right side. And up top, I got Cavallini and Reyna or Dahomey. One of those 2. So that'd be my lineup going forward.
It's all about consistency at that point, and it's like which one of the wingers is going to be consistent, because we saw it last year. You had Venuto and Bangura. Whichever one was playing crap, and whichever one came off the bench was doing good. So it's like that's not ideal. Hopefully, we don't have a similar situation with that. What about yourself, Zach?
Yeah, I think I think we know in MDS's heart he wants to play 5-3-2 or 3-5-2. I don't know. I don't think they have I don't think they fully have the players to play that every match. That's a problem. Like even what Steve said, I think is not bad. But not only is it maybe not something they could play all the time, I think if you want to bring on subs for that, it's hard to fit them into that formation. Like if you want to bring on Milinkovic, where's he going to go in your 5-3-2 unless he's an out-and-out striker, or you're changing the formation, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But
I think it would be more changing the formation at that point. But
so for me, I've always thought that. I mean, they played Peter Vermeers tonight, and I have a lot of respect for him as well, despite the taunting back in the USL days and early MLS days. I think, we've talked about this a lot in the past, but the Whitecaps really kind of need to carve out an actual identity in terms of playing. And I think if you were able to do, I don't think they will be able to do that really, truly. But if you were able to do that, that would really help shape things the way it does for a club like Kansas City. But I would probably go 4-2-3-1, where you can do things like they did tonight in terms of Gutierrez and Ali together on the one side. But with the whole roster, yeah, that's a little bit. So I'll play it a 4-2-3-1 with the whole roster. So I would go with of the current players, I would go with Bikel or Godoy as my right back. I would go with Ranko and either Godoy or DC as my center back. And then I would go with probably start the game. I would probably start Adnan at left, truly as a left back. But later in the game, I'd look to bring on Gutierrez and push him forward. And then Owosu and I guess Bikel, if he's not at center back, is kind of the holding. Is the two, and then I guess you have to put Imbom in that central attacking role, even though I don't think it fits him. And we've talked about that lots, and lots of people talk about that lots. And then wide, again, even though it doesn't suit him, you probably got to put Reyna in one of those wide spots. Cava is obviously in the middle, and then either Dahomey or Milinkovic in the other wide spot. Which again, it feels like a lot of. Let's put it this way. It feels like a lot of oval pegs in round holes, like not quite right, but not totally off, but not perfect.
I like 4-2-3-1. It's always been a position that I've liked. And for me, it's going to be very similar to Zach. I would have Bikel as right back. It's not his favoured position. That's the only thing that would concern me about that. But I'd have him as right back with Godoy and Ranko. Once they hopefully establish some kind of partnership, I think that's two solid defenders back there. With Ali starting at left back, then if you need to make a switch later on, you bring Guti on and you push Ali further up the pitch. My two holding, I might actually put Mbom back there beside Owusu.
For me, if Bikel's playing right back, then yeah, I'd put Mbom, and I put Reyna.
Yeah, I'd have Reyna like behind Cava within Dahomey and Milinkovic either side of that. I think that's an exciting team. I think it's a team that could do well. There should be creativity there. And if you gave Mbom a kind of free floating role where he's a 6, he's an 8, he's a 10, but he's just in that middle channel, you're not getting him go out wide or whatever. I thought he had his best game of the 4 games in the tournament tonight. Yeah. But it was a very low bar to begin with because he wasn't great. He had a couple of flashes. And there was that time in the second half, where the Whitecaps had a break and then he got the ball out wide and then he gave it away. And I'm screaming at my TV, the one thing you just did not want to do there was give it away because we'd pushed everyone up. And then it was a case of scrambling back. So you can't afford to do that. And I don't like ragging on players just because they're designated players. But in this league, it comes with a tag. It comes with expectations. And for me, he's not lived up to that. For a guy that wants to go and play in Europe, he needs to do so much better.
I was every time Mbom making a mistake or something like that, I was like, come on, Mbom, prove Zach wrong. That was every time I said it out loud too. I was like, come on, prove Zach wrong. I was just joking to myself and made myself laugh.
I agree with what Michael said, and that's what I said. And as we were chatting about the game as it was going on, like, yeah, there's so much. Maybe he does face so much more criticism, but it's because of those things. Yeah, the tag, what he's getting paid, whatever. There are expectations that come with that, and he also has shown glimpses of what he can do, and he did even in that game to me. Like you said, Michael, it was his best game of the tournament.
Yeah,
I personally think that the 3 guys in the midfield, whether you want to put Bikel, Mbom, Tybert, or Hoosu in there, I think all of them can like almost rotate. Like you could almost rotate them, and they could play all. Sometimes you could play Hoosu up front. Sometimes you can play they can always take turns pushing up front. So I think they're very interchangeable only because none of them are that pure number 10 that you need. So all of them could play kind of that role.
So let's bring this back around to what Michael originally asked. Those teams, whether it's the one I mentioned, the one Michael mentioned, the one you mentioned, Steve. How competitive do you think that team is in MLS moving forward, or in the rest of whatever 2020 is, or into 2021?
Yeah, not enough because of that missing piece. I'm so like, I know I hate being like repetitive about this, but that missing piece is crucial to them. It doesn't have to be a pure number 10, but it has to be somebody that can play like a number 10.
Yeah, I think they'd be competitive for the last potential playoff spot. I don't think they're a bottom of the conference team.
They're eight teams now, right? Or something like that. I know you're gonna...
They're eighth in the West, so they're just outside the
there's gonna be 16 teams in the playoffs this year, apparently. It was part of the announcement.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, they're potentially gonna expand it to 16 teams, 8 up per conference.
Oh,
that's what I heard.
We're eighth just now in the West then, so we're good.
So we're in, yeah.
Woo! MDS said he wanted to come home in a playoff spot because that's where they left. So he's just done it.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. We'll come to what the future might look like in a sec. Last thing we'll talk about then in this part. Prog Tim says he would put Kamiri on the right, which sounds terrifying to me, but Bikel higher up and Godoy, Ranko, and Cornelius in the middle.
That sounds like 4 center backs.
Yeah. I think the defense is the key, because I think we could be competitive if we're not giving up goals. Because I fancy Cava, Dahomey, Reina to put some goals away.
Yeah.
If we're giving up 2 or 3 goals a game,
that's why for me, and I know you want to end this now, but soon, but for me, those 3 guys at the back, like especially Godoy and Renko, they've shown an ability to control the ball. So I feel like if you have those 2 guys definitely in the middle, it allows the other midfielders to push up, and then you don't have to have like a Tybert come back to collect the ball, or you don't have to have another player to collect the ball. Those guys can distribute the ball from the back. So I think that would work better.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Might get a chat with MDS during the week, and we'll bring it on next week's show just to kind of see what the future holds in store. I asked him a little bit about the future in the press conference tonight, and I asked that as well during the TFC press conference, because no one really knows what's going to happen. So we're going to look at that now. If you're listening on the podcast, we're going to look at that in part 5. Those of you in the stream, it's really lucky you get to hear it now before everyone else. The Athletic on Friday, it was another one of those late Friday night sessions, kind of had an article talking about what the future might look like for MLS for the remainder of the season. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it now. So according to the tentative plan that is in place, the regular season is set to resume on August 22nd, so less than a month away, and also less than 2 weeks after the final of MLS is back, which is on August 11th. It's going to be in a couple of different phases. Phase 1 is from August 22nd to September the 13th, with teams playing 6 games in that period. Now, for the Canadian teams, you've got the problem like the border is going to be closed till August 21st. I would see it extended. I could actually see the border closed for the whole year, to be honest. I genuinely don't see them reopening it anytime soon unless cases in the States get way down. Now, what that means for Montreal, Toronto, and the Whitecaps is unless they get a special exemption, they can't leave the country without having to go back and quarantine for 14 days. The Whitecaps, TFC, and the Impact just now, heading home from Orlando, all 3 teams, they now have to quarantine away from their families even longer, away from everything for 2 weeks after getting back. They knew that was the case, but that is what the case is going to be. So the initial plan for phase 1, and we'll just look at each phase individually just now, is that the 3 Canadian teams would remain in Canada and only play against each other during that phase. We talked about it at the end of Thursday's show. You were like, no. I thought it was just a rumor and it was made up. But nope, the murmurs that I was told were true by the looks of it. And it's going to be 6 games between all the Canadian teams. It's going to be 3 home, 3 away, which means the Whitecaps are going to have to head east 3 times, and only one of the eastern teams is going to have to head west twice, and the other one's only going to head west once. So already not a fair schedule. Thoughts on it all?
I guess it's something that has to be done at this point. Like I said, I don't think I'm not confident at all this season is going to end anyways. Like even for America, unless they're just going to ignore all the uptick in infections and stuff like that. So if they're going to ignore that, then they might get it done. But they're right now, if this was another country, they would have shut all the leagues down at this point. If it was any other country in the world, if they had this many infections, there would be no leagues going on at all. And everybody
well, not Belarus, because vodka and saunas kill everything in Belarus.
Yeah.
Sluts are still crap, by the way.
But yeah, I like I said, I don't think it's going to happen. So yeah, they could play this first phase probably pretty easy, but once they open up that phase 3, I don't think the border is going to open. I totally agree with you that I think the Canadian teams are just going to be left out to dry, or they make preparations where they relocate to America and they play out of a certain location or something.
Well, yeah,
maybe.
We'll come to that in a sec. So, Zach, what do you feel about the Canadian teams just playing each other in a non-stop round robin, or at least 6 games to start with?
6 games each, so you're playing 3 times against each team, right?
No, it's 6 games in total. Each team will play 6 games. So you're. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So you're playing
3
each
games.
Team 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too late for math.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound ideal. But I guess we're not living in ideal times. So
no.
Yeah. Would you assume this would take place at some place like BC Place, or?
Yeah, it's meant to be in their home stadiums, which is problematic then for TFC because you've got the NHL bubble that is set up on Exhibition Park, I think it's called. So BMO's on the same place, so that would be them in the bubble there. So I don't know how that works, or it doesn't really matter, I guess, because there's no fans in attendance. They could play anywhere in Toronto.
I think if you can, I think if they do testing every day or something like that, and they get cleared, then they might be able to get cleared to go into that bubble just to enter into that stadium. So that might work fine as long as they go in and go out right away. So I think that I don't see how they can have attendance in there, and then I don't think that's going to happen for sure, especially in Canada. I think American teams will try that for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
phase
USL
2,
right?
Sorry, Zach.
USL is doing attendance, right?
Yeah, USL are. Although touching on that, Alan Koch's Colorado Springs Switchbacks game against Austin Bold on today, Sunday, was called off because the opposition had tested positive.
How many? A lot of players, or
all of them?
Can't remember, but it's like
a significant amount.
Yeah, enough to get a game called off. For they were doing more testing.
Wait, what is that number? Because we still don't know what it is for MLS.
So phase 2 of MLS's return plan, they want to have 12 games from September 16th to November 8th. So you'd be having a 23-game regular season.
Right into flu season.
Yes. 2 from before everything shut down. The 3 group games from Orlando. And then you'd have these 18 games after the MLS's back tournament. And they would be played, these 18 games would be played over about an 11-week plan. Now, the tentative plan is also looking at the possibility, and apparently TFC are already moving ahead with this idea, that they will have to shift operations to the US at some point this fall. Now, I think, first of all, that is frankly unacceptable to ask players to relocate for 2-3 months away from their family to another country. I know the Blue Jays are doing it, but as I've been trying to talk about to some folk online, you look at the Blue Jays, how many of those players are Canadian? Not a lot. They've probably
No.
got family in the States anyway, so it's fine for them being based in the States.
No.
We've got a lot of Canadian and foreign players here. If
Yeah.
their wives can't come down with them to the States, you've got wives here that don't speak English. They've already been left alone for this tournament. You cannot expect people to be away from their families and go to the States where things are out of hand in a lot of places just now for 2 to 3 months. If it were to happen, we're going to be in another situation where a lot of our guys are going to decide, I'm not going down.
Yeah, and
And
not
I'm
only that, the Blue Jays are one of the youngest teams in Major League Baseball. So they're I don't think very many are even have like they obviously have extended families, but their own like wives and kids, and there are very few that have them. So that probably doesn't make a difference to them. Totally agree with you that it does make it harder. Some obviously families will be able to relocate because they are American, but for example, if you look at Vancouver as an example, there's maybe 2 or 3 that are I think there was only 3 Americans that were the people that live in America full time. So that's only 3 families, and the rest are, like you said, foreign or Canadian. So it does make a huge difference for them, and to see if they could relocate.
So the Walkers asked about this in the comments, Michael. If we are going to have to relocate to the States to play some of the games, will we still be missing half the squad?
Definitely.
I think you'll get the Colombian will play if they're especially if they're out of Washington State. Then his wife's family will presumably get to maybe be by her family.
Yeah, that's true, because she's American, so she could go down.
Yeah. But
I think the only player that might be taken out would be, because the only player that was forced out, it was Toussaint Ricketts, wasn't it? Or
I can see Luca not going though. Just
he's already said no. Like, why would he? I mean, if it's in Washington, like northwestern Washington State, maybe because that's okay.
But you're playing away games as well, remember? So you're going all over the country.
That's true.
But the thing is with Luca, I think his thing was that they had a family member that just passed away very recently, so they weren't maybe they weren't emotionally ready to go down there. I don't know. I'm just spitballing there, so I don't know if that's true or not. But that could be, maybe he's ready to go down because by end of August or September, even if maybe his family will be settled in by then, and he'll be able to travel, because obviously this is not going to happen until September, the third phase, so that should be fine.
Yeah. I'll play a little bit now on the podcast of what Mark DeSantis said when I asked him about what the next month looks like for the Whitecaps after this tournament. And interesting comments from Mark, which for those of you watching the live stream just now, if you haven't seen it, so basically MDS is pleading America to get their shit in order and to stay indoors and to wear masks and to drive the virus down. Otherwise, to me, it sounded like he was all for not going ahead with this. And you know what? See if the Whitecaps said, okay, we'll play our games in Canada against Canadian teams, but we're not relocating to the US. If that's the only way we can play, we're not doing it. We're not completing the season. They have my backing 100%. I would not have any qualms about them pulling out at all. I just don't think that any Canadian team should be asked to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's I mean, I know again we're in kind of extreme times, and that that means some of us have to take extreme measures for different things. But yeah, it feels crazy that they're going to have to do this for this period of time. And we do know other sports leaguers are doing that, but they don't have the international. I mean, they have far less international players, I think, in most of those leagues. At least from my limited perception of them. But I could see the Whitecaps missing some players for sure, maybe not as many. Like, I'm pretty sure Andy Rose would be there, unless maybe the health thing is too big of a concern. But we hope to St. Ricketts they'll be able to allow him to move forward.
I know that is a worrying one, because it's like we obviously don't know what the health condition was that stopped him traveling.
Yeah.
If this isn't clearing up anytime soon, he might have to retire. I'm just spitballing completely there. Obviously, we don't know, but you have to look at that.
Yeah.
Just a couple of other things from the Athletic article. Nashville and Dallas, because they missed the MLS's back tournament, they have to play each other in an additional 3 games to make up for their lack of participation in the group stages.
Who has to?
Yeah.
Nashville and Dallas?
Nashville and
Nashville,
Dallas.
Yeah, well, there's been no update on what's going on with them either, right? They've been pretty hush-hush on.
Yeah.
their-
Also,
their this.
Nashville are going to be moving to the Eastern Conference for the rest of 2020. And it's actually 18 teams that's going to make the playoffs, 9 from each conference.
Oh, was it 18? I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought they expanded just by 1.
I missed that when I read it earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a playing game?
Just let everyone in. If it's like I said before this tournament started, if 16 of the 26 teams are going to make it to the knockoff round, you've got to be pretty shit not to make it. Whitecaps made it, so obviously we're good. But if you've got 18 of the 26 teams now making it to the playoffs, aye.
I think that's more that they want to make sure that nobody can complain that it was unfair, that they want to take the unfairness out of the whole thing about it being a shortened season. It was unfair that we missed the playoffs. So I think they're just trying to get it. And also, I think they realized last year with all the excitement over the knockout, the single game knockout, that was exciting for fans and people tuned in. So I think that's the reason why they probably want to take advantage of it in this kind of season that we're short anyways.
Talking of fans, state and local government guidelines will be used to determine whether fans can attend matches. MLS will allow teams to host fans in stadiums if local guidelines permit them to do so. We know that the USL are doing that in a few places, but not all. So because of that, it's been reported that DC United are exploring hosting games at 2 venues outside of Washington so they can have fans there. And New York City FC can't use Yankee Stadium probably because of the baseball.
Because they have a compressed season this year, so they don't have that many options.
But then you're talking about level playing fields and fairness. You're going to have some teams that are going to be playing with fans and having maybe a home advantage with fans there, and some teams not playing with fans. So it's not a level playing field.
No.
And I don't know if I would not think in BC we'll have fans at BC Place, because it sounds like 50 is still the limit for large gatherings and things like that. So unless you're just letting 50 fans in.
Yeah, no, that's still too high for me personally. But 50 fans at BC Place might be okay because you're so spread out. I don't know if that's like you're going to have one person in each section. Obviously, that wouldn't make a difference for FC Dallas, but everybody else probably would make a huge difference on how it looks.
It'd be like the Cavalry FC game last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about fair and balanced. I mean, the league hasn't had a fair and balanced schedule since I think 2011 or 2012 or something ridiculous. We've always talked about how the supporter shield is a bit tainted in that teams are not playing the same number of teams, same number of times, and all that. And this year, again, it's an exceptional year, but it is farcical.
Yeah, there's a lot of this that's farcical. But that is it, I think, for tonight's show. Before we wrap up, obviously the 3 Canadian teams are out. There's still an amazing 14, 15 days of this tournament left. Obviously not games every day, but it goes on to August 11th. Do you think your interest will remain in watching the rest of it? I've watched every game, either live or fast forwarding the early morning games. I was talking to our good friend Greg Petrie today, and I was saying I'm watching games like last night's Philly New England game. If that was a regular season game or even a playoff game, I wouldn't have watched that live. But because it's a knockout and it's the tournament, I found myself watching it. So I've been watching games I wouldn't normally have watched. As you know, I've been jumping on all these conference calls and just chatting to as many different players and coaches as I can to get stuff for the shows. I've enjoyed doing that. I think I'll still have a good interest in it. But will you guys?
I've missed quite a few, especially the early stages. I missed quite a few because I completely forgot the games were on. I wasn't used to the games being on, whether early in the morning or late. I think if I know the games are on, I'll probably have it on in the background, but nothing where I'm like sitting down and actually watching the game.
Yeah, I mean, it'll help that they're knockout games, but yeah, I mean, it depends on how much you want to talk about them, Michael. Like,
Well,
are we going to get there next Sunday to talk about what's happened the last week, or?
I don't think we'll be doing any more live YouTube shows for a while.
Oh,
So, I mean,
that's disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the Whitecaps are quarantined now for 2 weeks, so there's definitely no Whitecap stuff to talk about probably for the next 2 weeks, unless anyone breaks the quarantine.
Maybe they could pop on our show if they're doing nothing anyways.
Live, yeah. Oh, Michael, let's get these. Would some great interviews now. But
who do you want to do live?
It might be hard for them to be monitored.
Toss and Ricketts. I think Ricketts with Toss would be a good person to have on live.
Yeah, well, Toss was on the MLS watch along thing that I did, so that was good. He bumped me for a bit. But...
just like that.
Yeah. I toyed with possibly doing a live watch along for the final, depending on who's in the final.
I'll do that if you want it. If you want to do it, no problem. I'll jump on then. But I'm not gonna. I don't know if I could pay attention to these games. They're kind of not that exciting.
Orbital says we should talk about NHL or CFL.
I could just do my East Fife podcast and just put that out in CITR instead.
I know you. This just actually came out a couple of hours ago. I thought I'd just discuss it with you guys really quickly. It was on The Athletic. Apparently, players are going to be suing for hundreds of millions of dollars over their statistic. Like in the English Football League, Scottish Football League, other national leagues, they're going to be the tracking data. They're going to be suing for millions of pounds because it's more than 400 current and former players. So I recommend everybody check that out. It's gonna be interesting to see if that happens or not. I just perused the article. I sent it to you guys in the WhatsApp through WhatsApp.
I saw it there.
I haven't seen my phone's charging.
Are they suing the league, Steve?
I think so, or whoever does the tracking. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but
they're giving that data to betting companies
or other teams that might have affected their future salaries and stuff like that, because they might not get the salary if it shows their stats, the Moneyball stats or whatever aren't very good on them, so it might affect their salaries in the future too. That's what it sounded like to me. I haven't read the whole thing, like I said.
Surely there must be something in their contracts about this kind of thing. You would think. Maybe there wasn't, or there's not.
They said it's going to be a precedent-setting lawsuit, so we'll see what happens here. It'd be interesting to see if this also comes to MLS as well.
A couple of things I was going to quickly mention. Some tweets, because I'd asked what the mood of the fan base was like during the game, because I know there's a lot of fans that like to see more attacking football than trying to grind out a 0-0 draw and get to penalties. So, like, we had comments such as from Sky Buller, who said, from oddsmakers' worst team and everyone's saying we won't get a point, to being top 13 with 11 players missing by the end, I'll take it. Proud of the effort. But then you've got Ryan Burns at Authentic Me 13, who says that he doesn't like to see small successes championed as positives when they're actually negatives. And he feels that we grow from expecting better and not accepting failure. He wants better, and he hopes for a culture in the city and amongst the fan base that does that. He feels that saying that they had done well to get out the group, etc., was being too charitable, and that if we're to grow as a club and supporters, we need to call out not being good enough while still wanting it to be better. Think that's fair?
Yeah, that's fair. You can definitely call it out, but you also have to take into account what they were dealing with. Like you could say that they haven't established a culture, but prior to this tournament, they only played 2 games. So how much of an effect did they have to establish that over the season that I think this is the season they wanted to do that, where they wanted to establish something. And when you play 2 games, one of them was a very surprising win against the Galaxy. Nobody expected that. The first game was obviously very disappointing. Then they came back with the surprise, then shut down. And then, so many months later, they got to go to a bubble with half their team or majority of their starters missing. You can't you could definitely want more and want better, but you also have to take into account what they went through.
Michael, who was the tweet from again?
Ryan Burns.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I get that. I get that in one sense, but aside from the, I believe what Steve said is very important. But aside from that, like if we go back to the discussion we had earlier about what we think the best lineup and best formation to make them competitive is, I don't see that team one winning a lot, but two, and maybe more importantly, I don't see them playing football that's going to be crazy exciting for people like home games. One of the things about this tournament is you didn't have to perform for home games. I think Stephen Egan talked about last week in terms of how that affected scores and even some results and some attitudes within matches that impacted the overall result. So like, I know some people like yourself, Michael, have the perspective of, hey, if every game is like LA away, we win 1-0. It's not pretty. We nick a goal. I don't care. We won. We got the 3 points. We're going the right way in the table, all that kind of stuff. But I think in the modern era, that's not good enough for some people. And so I think in MLS, I think it's hard to do both. And I think we've seen other coaches in this city at this organization get in trouble for, not get in trouble, but have dealing with perception issues over winning but not winning well, or winning with having 30% possession or whatever. And so I think they're going to have the same thing. I think with knowing all the limitations, as Steve said, not just for this tournament but for the organization in general, you can have both. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Mark DeSantos to both get results and do it in a way that makes people happy.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting times, and let's see what the future brings. It could be a very interesting end to the year, MLS-wise. CPL, we're still waiting for news on that as well. So just before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
For me, it's at Zachary AM.
I'm Michael McCaw. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. On YouTube, well, you're already watching it, but if you're listening to this on the podcast, give us a subscribe on YouTube, turn on notifications so you know whenever we do any of these live things, and on Instagram at AFTN Soccer. And Uncle Don's just given us a little message. Yeah, he doesn't care about Canada. Anyway, thank you for listening, everybody. Take care, stay safe. If the Whitecaps players are listening to this, enjoy your quarantine. We're always available to chat. Jump on, it'll be fun. And until we meet again, thanks for listening, and Mon the Caps. Bye, everybody.